Welcome to America at its Best. My name is Rebecca Painter and I'm here at State Policy Network's 32nd annual meeting. There are 1,600 people roaming the halls in Phoenix celebrating all that you've helped make possible this year. Guess who I ran into in the hallway? Governor Doug Ducey, one of the best governors this country has ever had, and he agreed to sit down and do an interview for the show. Now, I could go on and on introducing Governor Ducey. We all know that he's a hero in the school choice world. He passed it before it was popular, before it was cool. He passed one of the largest state tax cuts in Arizona's history. He's brought hundreds of thousands of jobs here. I mean, we could all use more leaders like this in our country today. We'll get into all that. But first, Governor Ducey, welcome to annual meeting and welcome to the show.
Well, welcome to Arizona, Rebecca. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the good work that State Policy Network does. I love you bragging on what we were able to accomplish and how far Arizona has come, but we did have partners, and folks at SPN are definitely top of the list.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Before we get into what you did as governor, I'm more interested in what you did before you were governor. I hear that you were CEO of Cold Stone Creamery. Now, I really love ice cream. Tell us a little bit about your life before governor and how it set you up to be successful in your governorship.
Well, I was a businessman. I came from the private sector, started my career at Procter & Gamble, and my company was Cold Stone Creamery, the ice cream concept. It started here in Tempe, Arizona, with the first store at the southwest corner of Tempe and McClintock. We built 1,440 stores in less than 10 years, all 50 states. Today, Cold Stone operates in 31 countries around the world, and I sold the company in 2007, but it really was great training, not only on economic policy and how you do business in other states, because we opened stores in every state, but what states were more welcoming or easier on the entrepreneur. Anybody that's ever opened up a lemonade stand as a child has some idea what it is to open an ice cream store. It's the same concept, but you are the little guy. I mean, you don't have any lawyers or lobbyists or accountants. These were entry-level entrepreneurs putting oftentimes their life investment into our idea. And it was a wonderful time, and I was able to work with incredible people, and we made millions of people happy through the ice cream.
Well, then did you just wake up one morning and say, well, I'm going to be governor. That's what I want to do. I want to be a politician.
No, I'd never even been to Washington, D.C. I sold the company in 2007, and I was part of an organization called Young Presidents Organization, and they had an Inside Washington educational trip. And I'm not a good sightseer, so I wanted to go there with a purpose, and a friend of mine had done that, and he came back raving about, he'd got inside the Department of Homeland Security and met President George W. Bush, and I thought that I would really love to be a part of that. They were doing it every 6 months, or it was coming up in 6 months. I signed up for that. My eyes were really open to a lot of things that were happening. I better understood what differentiated federal policy from state policy, and I really wasn't happy with how Arizona was being perceived as a state. I was part of a number of business leadership organizations that would really make fun of people in the government, make fun of people that had run for office. So it wasn't a naive idea, but I thought, why don't I run for governor and fix this?
Well, I mentioned some of the success you had as governor, and that's barely scratching the surface of what you were able to accomplish. How did your experience as a businessman set you up for success in economic policy and some of the other things that you achieved?
Well, it was invaluable. Government is not a business, but business principles apply. So as governor, you are the chief executive of the state government. You also get to be the spokesperson and salesperson for the state. So being able to communicate a vision, chart a course, pick the people, set the priorities, that's no different than being a small businessman or a large businessman. So I think all of that is important. And then I feel fortunate also that I was able to do it in the second part of my career because a lot changes when you become governor, and to have the discipline to focus on what the objectives were and to be relentless and energetic around communicating that and continuing to communicate that. You know, some folks say that governing is campaigning by different means, meaning just because you won the election, well, you haven't really done anything yet. Now you have the opportunity to move these ideas that you ran on forward. And there's an axiom in politics: friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. Well, when you come into office, you don't really have any enemies. But over the course of time, because you're trying to move your agenda forward and other people have their ideas, oftentimes people you would think would be your advocates or your partner can be the obstacle. But that's part of our system, and we embraced it, and we did have tremendous success, but we also put a lot of energy behind this. We had a saying in the governor's office that you can get anything you want. You just can't get everything you want. So it's that idea of focusing on what's important now.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because looking back, I wasn't in Arizona at the time, of course, but it seems like you got everything you wanted when it comes to universal education reform. Now, as I said, it started in Arizona. Can you tell us a little bit about that time and give us your perspective? We're at a point now where it seems like things are booming and the time is now, but is that momentum here to stay? Can we all sit back and just chill out and let it happen?
No. Momentum is never here to stay. That's why they call it momentum. So now is the time to seize the day. It's to have a real sense of urgency. One anecdote around school choice and ESAs that I think is important, I ran on school choice. I mean, this is something I wanted to get done in 2014, something I put in my plan for Arizona. We passed a smaller version of school choice in 2017. And it was referred to the voters. There's an anomaly of our Constitution that if you get enough signatures, you can take a law that the governor signed and the legislature passed and put it on the ballot. Well, it went to the ballot and the people crushed it. They beat it 65 to 35. Wow. Rather than getting mad at the people, I huddled up my team and said, we need to do a better job communicating around this. So the silver lining was COVID-19. It opened parents' eyes to what was being taught or what wasn't being taught, and some of the values that were being shared during remote learning. So we passed a much larger, a fully universal school choice available to every single family in the state, over 1.5 million. That passed in 2022, in the last 2 weeks of my governorship. So 8 years in, and it took all of 8 years to get it done. And the people were so in favor of this, they weren't even able to get the signatures to refer it to the ballot. So now it's the law of the land. It's in 11 other states. It's on the 1 yard line in places like Texas and Tennessee. So if this is not happening in your state, now is the time to engage, to hold your governor accountable. And this is happening in all Republican states, but this doesn't have to be only a Republican idea. Just like people know the states that are good on tax policy, I don't think it'll be that long before moms in Chicago, in Philadelphia, in New York, and Los Angeles say, why isn't this available to my child?
Yes. So what do you say to folks out there who are really worried about corruption within the universal school choice system, or implementation just not working as well as it should or could?
Well, I think step one is to make this happen. Now, if you're rich and prosperous and in a well-to-do school system, you're probably just fine. And if you're of means, you can take your child to a private school or a Catholic school, or you can move into the zip code of your choice. If we truly believe in opportunity for all of our citizens, ESAs are the quickest way to get there.
Yep. Well, let's shift topics for a minute. Now, I'm a big fan of the states, and I don't like to talk about this often, but all eyes are on Washington, D.C. right now. People are just obsessed with it, as they should be. I find myself caught up in it a bit as well. What do you say to people that are just so immersed in the presidential election. I mean, should they be? Do the states matter as much as I feel like they do in my heart of hearts? Can you give me a reality check on this?
I think it's a balanced approach, but I think you do have the right perspective. These elections are incredibly important, probably more so now than any time in our life. What concerns me about the presidential election is it seems like this is the great American Super Bowl, played every 4 years, and the campaigns have gone from about a year to now longer than 2 years, and both sides are trying to elect the next king, not necessarily the next president. Who is president is important. Who's the majority in the Senate and the House of Representatives is important. But we have a federalist system. We don't just have one constitution, we have 51 constitutions. And all the things that we were able to do in Arizona around lowest flat tax in the nation, universal school choice, first state with the American Civics Act, universal recognition of occupational licensing, none of that had anything to do with Washington, D.C. We didn't need to ask for help or for permission. So I think more of that balanced approach on not only the presidential and national election, but what about the government that's closest to me, that I can affect the most? And that includes your governor and state legislature, but also your school board.
Yes, very well said. I agree 100%. Now, when you were governor, and today as well, you've just been such a good friend of the State Policy Network, and you worked closely with Goldwater Institute. Can you share how you view the role of this network in working closely with governors and other elected officials to get things done?
Well, State Policy Network is an MVP, most valuable player in what we were able to get done. I ran, like I said, I was a business person, so I would always measure best practices. It's something we were taught at Procter & Gamble. A lot of what Starbucks did right, we applied to Cold Stone to make it best in class in ice cream. So when I came into the governor's office, I looked at states that I thought were doing better than the state of Arizona, and one such state was Texas. Well, within 2 years, we had taken every good idea that Texas had and applied it to Arizona. So I wanted to be a policy entrepreneur. I wanted to be an innovator in policy, and I pulled my policy advisors together and I said, let's do things that are first in Arizona and that we export to other states. And State Policy Network, the Goldwater Institute, organizations like that have incredibly talented people that are very thoughtful. They like to nerd out on the laws and regulations and different things, and it kind of opens different avenues on things that you can approach, and that's available to every governor that's out there. I just like to think that we took maximum advantage of it.
Good. And now you may not be governor today, but you are very involved in many worthy organizations and causes. I've heard you talk a little bit in the last couple of days about Citizens for Free Enterprise. Can you tell me what that's about?
So Citizens for Free Enterprise is an organization that's headquartered in Arizona. It's in all 50 states organization. We educate and advocate for free enterprise. We think this is an evergreen American principle that really doesn't have anybody doing a very good job defending it. We even see some of this big government republicanism on the right. And we also want to help organize people. We think the other side oftentimes is much better at this, especially around election time. In many ways, it wasn't that long ago we mocked a community organizer, and it turns out organizing your community is important in very close elections. Thank goodness Stacey Abrams wasn't a very good gubernatorial candidate, but we do have to give her credit for what she did in Georgia in registering 800,000 additional new people. Today, Georgia has 2 pretty progressive United States senators. So we're going to be the leading organization on the right that is activating voters around free enterprise and holding candidates and electeds accountable.
That's incredible. Final question.
Yes.
Can you leave us with a reason you think we should all feel optimistic today?
I think we should feel hopeful, but we should also feel a real sense of obligation to get in the fight. Part of the reason I think you should remain hopeful is our history as a country. And there has always been a battle between freedom and tyranny. It has always been part of the defining course of what's happening, and we are the ones that have the better ideas. I think when they're properly presented, they're winning ideas. But in many ways, our job is more difficult. I mean, here we are with freedom, and there they are with free stuff.
That's very well said.
Free stuff can be easier in the beginning, but if we make the case and get into the rooms and answer the questions, I believe our ideas will prevail.
Thank you. Thank you for stopping by and taking time to talk this morning. We are so grateful for all you've done, all you continue to do.
Thank you, Rebecca,
Thank you.
and thanks to State Policy Network as well.
Thank you for joining America at its Best. We'll see you next time.